You're watching World Championship Wreckage, professional wrestling history the way the fans remember. Brought to you by Rivet City Radio and the World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Today's episode.
Whoa, 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 whoa. It's season 2, baby. We're changing it up. Welcome, everybody, to let's just say a bonus episode here of Wreckage. This is something that actually won the poll season 1, and, life got busy, and we just didn't have a chance to touch on it, but I'm excited to finally be doing this episode. As always, I am your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan. Next to me, as always, a chef by trade, a mark by choice, from Botch Botch and Chair Shots and Rivet City Radio, the Will Gray. And the crowd goes wild. What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm well. How are y'all?
You know. Tired, like always. That's just my MO. So I live my life, and in negative miles per hour. So that's how my life runs. But joined with us, and this is the perfect person to join us for this conversation, original member of the Wrecking Crew, which one day we will do another damn Wrecking Crew episode. Yeah. Again, we just all busy. We all spread everywhere. 1/3 of Queen's Court here on World Championship Wreckage, busting out those episodes every single week, watching Monday Night Raw from the very beginning. It's our boy, the American Dream, Husky Rhodes. What's up, buddy?
Yo, what's going on, gentlemen? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I knew you'd be perfect for this because you and I have, we've marked out for this subject off camera plenty of times.
Oh, we have talked extensively about this man off camera.
Yes. We're going to be talking some Raven, and we're not even just going to go Raven. We're going to look at this as like the evolution of Scott Levy, because I'm also kind of following along with Queen's Court and watching from the get-go. And they have been dealing with a lot of Johnny Polo. And I just didn't remember a lot of Johnny Polo, so it's been fun to watch that. So I thought a lot of this will be Raven, but we will talk a little bit Johnny Polo and Raven, where we are, even to this day, which we just talked about off camera. So I'm going to ask you guys first off, when did you first see Raven? Was it Johnny Polo? Was it, Raven and ECW? Was it Raven and WCW? Was it even later? And you know what? I'm assuming I know Will, because I don't know exactly when, but I know he was a WCW guy just like me. So I'm assuming it was either ECW or WCW before he, somebody might say they saw him in WWE later on when he came over after the whole buyout, but Will, let's start with you. When was the first time Raven popped into your life?
I would probably say in that mid-90s push. I remember for sure seeing him first in WCW as Raven. But I feel like that would be around the same time, too. I had started watching ECW pretty regularly. So I probably saw him there as well. But I most comfortably remember Raven in WCW first. He was one of those first times I remember seeing a real hardcore kind of like grunge rock artist in WCW. He was that touch of the attitude era from WWF coming over into WCW with the type of character and work he was doing.
Husky, what about you?
Mine was ECW. I remember, like, because I started watching ECW right around the time of the Sandman Raven storyline. So seeing like his promos from back then, I was like, it was like 95, so I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
Just being like glued to the TV
Yeah.
watching Raven. Like, that's the guy that really kind of like super hooked me in ECW.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wow, like this dude's promos are insane. And he came out to the Offspring, so I was super fucking stoked on that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
looking back on it now, like all the like crazy band shirts he was wearing,
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God. Like he had this one typo negative shirt. I was just like, oh my God, how much would I have to pay that man if he still has that shirt?
Probably a lot. He might be. I mean, who
Probably a
knows?
lot.
I mean, the amount of
Um,
it's like, easiest ring gear ever. You know what?
Ugh.
Band shirts.
Band shirts and jean shorts.
That's what I was gonna say. The jorts and the leather jacket, and he had the leather
Flannel.
jacket over the band T-shirt with the flannel tied around his waist.
Mhm.
And
Like,
Doc Martens.
yeah, that screamed 1970s Seattle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he literally looked,
1997 Seattle, rather, not
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
he looked like he was outside of a Soundgarden show
Seriously.
in like 91.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, for me, very much like Will, it was WCW. That was when I saw him first. And we'll talk a little bit about the different feuds and everything. And there's one particular match in particular I just really want to and feud I want to touch on when we get there. But yeah, WCW. And it was through that. Then I mean, again, I've mentioned this before on episodes of, a kiosk in a mall that did tape trading, and you could buy stuff from Japan and you could buy stuff from ECW. And,
mhm.
like I would talk to the guy that ran it, and he would humor me. I mean, he was an adult and I was a kid, and he's like, well, who's some of your favorites now? And I'm like, well, I'm really getting this guy in WCW, Raven, and the Flock. And he's like, oh, Raven, ECW. And I'm like, what do you mean ECW? And so he literally looks at my dad at the time, because like my dad and I, like, my parents were divorced. So like my dad, like, we would walk the mall, and like he was into wrestling. So he's like, buy your kid this thing, like this tape. Like, just buy him now. If he likes that wrestler, buy him. So my dad's like, all right. So he buys me this tape. And that's where I start seeing him. And I mean, it literally was just like, I mean, it's clips. I have no idea of main storylines. I mean, there's some promos and stuff in there, but I mean, it was just like, I was like, I am him. I can relate. I was the kid in the plaid and the Doc Martens, like, listening. I mean, like you said, Soundgarden, like like
Yeah.
Nirvana, like all that grunge and that era, just listening to that and feeling that way and being like, oh my gosh, so there's a representation of me on pro wrestling, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But before we get to Raven, let's just touch a little bit on his earlier career. It's weird to say that, he started training and working in the late 80s. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you see him now and you can tell, I mean, he's older, but like, I think of Raven, I just don't think of him being as old as he is
Right.
now. Like, it's just like, there's no way. But I mean, he did some stuff, he was training different areas. He was in WCW early on, 92 to 93, as before that he was Johnny the Body, on the indies as he was training. It was which, I mean, such a very late 80s, early 90s. Let me just find a name. It's like Marvel characters. Let me just find something that rhymes or that has the same letters, first letters. But we get to 92 and 93, and he gets into WCW as Johnny Flamingo, a very surfer-like, little tassels, brightly colored gear and everything.
You know what I want to see? This is a dream match. Johnny Flamingo versus Surfer Sandman from Eastern Championship Wrestling.
Oh my God. Scotty Flamingo and Surfer Sandman.
Yeah.
Give it to me. Give it to me.
Like, think about that. Raven and Sandman, who they became stylistically in the ring by the 2000s, who they were in like that 91, 92, 93 push when Sandman came out in a surfer style wetsuit with his surfboard. And then you think about Johnny Flamingo. Like, give me that match, please. I wonder if that happened at any point.
You're going to have to find that out.
I'm
Also,
looking
did
right
anybody
now.
else see a random thumbs up pop up on Will's camera? Or was
Yeah.
that just me? What the hell was that? He's got effects.
Yo! That's awesome.
What did you do?
What is it? Yeah! This is awesome.
He's like, I'm not going to share my secrets.
Hell yeah.
It's a Mac thing. Honestly,
Yeah.
StreamYard has a port for Mac. I've got a few other ones too. What's the other one?
Yeah. That's cool as fuck.
That's the one you're going to use every time you win a poll and you lead the
You're like,
discussion.
No, Surfer Sandman never wrestled Johnny Flamingo, unfortunately.
There
That's
is a match that somebody I think posted on TikTok, or I think Mike Duplessis may have sent it to me. Scotty Flamingo versus a very young Rob Van Dam in WCW.
Ooh, I'm about to find that. I'm about to look at that.
When he was Robbie V.
Robbie
still.
V. Yep. It's weird that like all these ECW, like, you know, they're already crossing paths here, like beforehand.
Yeah.
It's just I mean, as big as the wrestling business is, it's a small world. You
will cross paths with people.
You will cross people all throughout your career.
We're seeing it in Queens Court all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like PJ Walker, fucking Just Incredible, has been on like most of the shows we've done. We just had Chris Hamrick on one of them. Tony DeVito from the Baldies is a job guy in the 90s.
Small guy, and I mean, you just run across people. I mean,
when you start getting to the end of the 90s and you start seeing Ruthless Aggression guys coming in to job out for like enhancement talent on Raw, doing like tryouts in like 98 and 99.
Yeah.
You start recognizing these guys and you're like, holy crap, man.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Very seriously.
Watching a young Christopher Daniels on Shotgun Saturday Night wrestling Taka Michinoku. I'm like, what the fuck? He had hair? That's crazy.
That still messes with me when I see that. It's like, that's not right.
Any bald wrestler I see with hair, it's weird. I don't like it.
Yeah. It's like when I see Stunning Steve Austin now, I'm just like,
yeah, it's like, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right.
No.
It looks like Stone Cold in a wig.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like how he did in that Super Bowl commercial. Like, just not as like messed up and ratty. Well, after Johnny Flamingo, it shows you the range that you get with Scott Levy. Johnny Polo in WWF at the time. He's a manager. You get him on commentary with Vince. You get him in the ring, like, and you guys said it on Queen's Court, and I want to back you up on this. The wrestling style of Johnny Polo is night and day different than the wrestling style that would be Raven.
Oh yeah.
Like, it is like he had, I forget which episode it was and who he was wrestling. It wasn't too long ago. And it was, I mean, that's right. And it was super, I mean, the athleticism and everything that Scott Levy was doing as Johnny Polo. It's just crazy. Well, since you're like me and kind of grew up on the WWF side of WCW side of things, too many freaking federations and letters. Do you have any memories, or do you remember kind of coming across Johnny Polo in WWF?
No, any of my Johnny Polo stuff has always been rewatches from that early 90s push when I was watching later in life as an adult, because those early 90s, I was almost exclusive WCW. But down here in Tennessee and North Carolina, you know, less than a couple hours drive from Atlanta, where WCW was headquartered. It was kind of shoved down our throats in a lot of ways. And plus being in the tail end of the 80s and 90s push. I say it all the time, like when Lawler was still in Memphis all the time before he went to WWF full time and shit, like Memphis was the territory still. We still had a bunch of indie shows and stuff. So I didn't see Johnny Polo until later in life when I went back and I started doing research for podcasts and stuff to learn about the Raven character. And the big takeaway is you see the evolution, because you see him, and a lot of guys who become these hardcore wrestlers, the old homage is, if you can't wrestle, you just become a deathmatch wrestler.
Yeah.
Right? If you
Hide
can't
what you
do
can't
it,
do
you
with
just do that.
gimmicks.
Yeah. And Raven shows the opposite. Al Snow shows the opposite. Terry Funk is the living embodiment of the opposite of that phrase, because Raven and Funk and Snow are three brilliant minds in wrestling.
Mhm.
And you see a lot of that at this point in Raven's career, because you see him excel at commentary. You see him excel at in-ring work. You see him be versatile as a character. And this is in the 90s. This is when he's still baby. He's a baby Raven at this point. He's just a nestling.
Yeah, he's not even 10 years into his career. Like he's not even like hit his like full stride yet.
You don't get good at wrestling till you're in your 30s. You don't master it till you're in your 40s. But this is a Raven in his 20s, and he was already that good.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And Husky, you can talk about it a little bit more, because I know you guys have kind of researched and talked a little bit on Queen's Court. Like, he was working behind the scenes for WWF too.
He was a producer for a few years. I think it was 90 to 93, I think he was like a producer, and then he just became like an on-screen talent for the rest of his career or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, he had his toe deep in the creative process during that time, which is WWE at a weird kind of time. It's that we're out of the 80s. We haven't quite hit the new generation yet. It's that start of Raw, which is, as you guys have seen, very awkward at times and very weird.
Undertaker versus Slasher or whatever.
Yeah, dude. We're at the point where it's like we're trying to get the stink of Hogan off.
Yeah.
Of it. And it's getting close to the tail end of Savage too.
Yeah, you guys are getting close to losing Savage.
We talked about it on the last episode, because Savage is on commentary for a lot of it, and you can tell he no longer gives a shit. He's just saying the most random fucking things on commentary to make Vince go, what the fuck? Like, just talking about, he's like, yeah, me and Undertaker have the same thing in common. We like over easy eggs in the morning. The fuck does that have to do with anything?
He's like, I'm just done.
Yeah,
I'm done. Let me in the ring.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I'm too old to be in the ring.
Yeah. But if you go back and you watch, and I mean, where I'm watching with you guys, I mean, he's working with the Quebecers, which, I mean, he's that mouthpiece, because, I mean, PCO doesn't speak English at this point.
Yeah, PCO hadn't learned English yet, and Jacques can speak it pretty well, but when you have Scott Levy in your corner, let that man speak. Yeah,
I mean, there's a reason why he was so good with Raven and talking, because, I mean, he could do it as freaking Johnny Polo with
any character he has.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, let's move on and talk about the real meat and potatoes here of Scott Levy's career, and that's going to be the character of Raven. We get into ECW, and I mean, from the second he debuts, he's with, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Blue World Order.
Stevie Richards.
Stevie Richards, thank you. Stevie, if you're watching this, I am so sorry. I don't know why I'm blanking. I was like, I can pitch you clear as day, and I can't do it. My apologies, sir. But like, he comes in, and it's just like he just walks out in exactly the gear and everything, and you're just like, this is different.
Yeah.
This is unique. And it screams unique, and it screams the time. Um, I think one of my favorite parts of the DVD, and it did so well, the rise and fall of ECW, was
Yes.
where Paul Heyman talks about Raven. He's like, I had a performer that put everything into anything that we talked about, and whatever decision we made with, he went with it and was 100% on it. Like, he just had a performer that would do anything. And Raven did. I mean, Raven, like, to me, like, you could have had him be like Sting in 90, I mean, as Crow Sting and everything. With that appearance and what he did, you could have had him not talk and he still pull you in, I think.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
because of how well he could talk, it just added weight to it. Well, as well researched as you are, how important do you think it was to you have a character like Raven who is, you know, at the time very grunge, very anti-establishment. But juxtaposed against that, he's so well spoken. He's quoting Edgar Allan Poe, of course, with The Raven, but he's quoting things from literature and history. Like, how important do you think that is? And like, is that something that should be utilized? I mean, it's something maybe that's missing in today's product from a character.
From my perspective in life, I thrive in chaotic good. And
Mhm.
I feel like that was Raven throughout his entire wrestling career. He was always a really good tweener. He was always not a heel, not a baby face. Like, and if you look at the ability to not need to say anything, the perfect example comes in 1996, right in the center of this ECW run, Heatwave 96. It's Team Dreamer and Sandman and those guys, and I think Devon versus Stevie Richards and Raven and a few guys from the flock, right? And they're in this ridiculous ruled cage match, and it involved Tommy Dreamer's son and like everything that got into it. It was when the son got in the cage in the leather jacket and did the
Oh,
Raven
you
thing.
mean Sandman's son?
Sandman.
Sandman's son, yeah, not Tommy Dreamer's, but when Sandman's son came into like all of it, like the master manipulator, where he didn't even need to say anything and he could get these people to do whatever he wanted. Like the flock was borderline cult like with how much they would just follow this man's every beck and call. It was the old thing about you didn't have to, when he said jump, you didn't need to ask how high because you already knew the answer for him. That's
Yeah.
how the flock was for Raven. And he commanded that respect without ever having to do anything. He was the most nonchalant motherfucker on the planet with how he delivered everything, the way he walked, the way he said things. He was like, I do this a lot, but don't take it as I'm comparing this person to Sandman. Like Hook, that whole like, I don't give a fuck, like, whatever, man. Like that was almost how Raven came across in the 90s. Like that very, he didn't have to speak with volume because everything he said carried weight. You know, he could
Yeah.
just go out there and talk and you'd listen. And that's what made him important because it wasn't just his work or just his character or just his promo. It was how he took all of those pieces together. And that story in ECW, when you combine that with Sandman and the Dudleys breaking up and Bubba Ray versus Big Dick Dudley and Devon and everything going there. And then you realize all of that happening in ECW at that time was because Raven and the flock are sitting there like minionettes, like playing with the puppets. Like
Mhm.
they're manipulating every faction and group in ECW from within while Raven makes his play for the ECW title. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. ECW champion, it's funny. Like, you'll look at him and ECW champion. When he gets to TNA, he becomes the NWA champion and everything. Sadly, we don't get that in WCW. We don't get that in the WWE. But he proves that he can hold the title in a company. And you bring up Sandman and you bring up Tommy Dreamer. His two biggest feuds in ECW, without a doubt, Tommy Dreamer, and the Sandman. I'm gonna ask each of you, to you, which is the better feud, and also which is the more important feud in Raven's career? Which one helped him more, the Sandman or the Tommy Dreamer? Because with one, the Tommy Dreamer one is Tommy Dreamer was a jock at summer camp, known Raven his entire life. Raven was the anti-establishment non-jock. It's that, you know what? I wasn't Mr. Popularity, but now here you go. Like I'm gonna like now I've got your girl, the girl that you hated and called fat, and now she's a freaking playmate.
Yeah.
But then you got Sandman and that storyline, and Sandman's son, and the craziness of like the crucifixion on a cross,
Mm-hmm.
and the violence, and the extremes that Sandman went to in terms of, you know what? He went blind and stayed at home for a month to keep kayfabe.
Mm-hmm.
So, two very important and legendary feuds in the history of ECW. But for Raven, which was the better feud and which one was more important to his career?
Hmm.
I know my answer.
Husky, you want to lead off on this one?
Yeah, sure. I will say to help his career and solidify him as the type of character that he is the Sandman feud.
Okay.
100%. My favorite one, though, is the Tommy Dreamer one. Because I was a big Tommy Dreamer mark as a kid. Well, because for one, Alice in Chains is one of my favorite bands. And
You
just
came to snuff the rooster, man.
dude, him coming out to Man in the Box is fucking beautiful. And also and the stuff with Terry Funk involvement in that, and like the whole like Barely Legal whole angle with Raven and Funk being like, you're my father figure in wrestling. I hurt my actual father. What do you think I'm gonna do to you? Type shit. But then like the Tommy Dreamer feud kind of ended because that's when he goes to WCW.
Yeah.
When Tommy gets the belt finally. And the only time Tommy Dreamer ever got the fucking belt, the world title in
And the win.
ECW, is because the other people left. Because he got it from Raven when Raven left. When Taz did the whole shit with Mike Awesome,
Yeah.
he came back and just gave the belt to Tommy Dreamer. So,
Well,
yeah. I would
what say you?
Yeah.
Tommy Dreamer helped make Raven the main event star. Sandman established him as the top guy in ECW. So I think they both did very different things for him. But I would think overall, Sandman is to Raven in a lot of ways what Funk is to Foley, or what Sami Zayn is to Kevin Owens. I don't like using that stupid, cheesy wrestling soulmates line, but that's kind of how I feel about it. I would almost say in ECW specifically, Raven and Sandman more so than Raven and Tommy Dreamer.
For
Because
me,
again, going back to Heatwave 96, that specific story where they involved so many members of the families and the moving parts, like they were so intertwined for 2 or 3 years that like every now and then they would just cross paths and it'd be like, oh shit, you remember when A, B, and C happened last year and the year before? And it's like, it's our yearly like Punxsutawney Phil showing up where it's like, oh shit, we're gonna get Sandman and Raven again,
Right,
like
right.
yeah.
I think for me, Sandman and Raven helped establish, like kind of how you said, establish that character. Here, this gave the audience. This is now you being able to read the pulse of what this character is. This is not Johnny Polo. If you saw him then, this is not Johnny Flamingo. This is Raven. This is the pulse. This is what he's capable of. This is what you expect. This is the violence that you're going to get. This is going to be the extreme side, if you will, because we are in ECW. But for me, it always comes down to that Tommy Dreamer feud. Like here's the thing. It spanned the majority of his ECW career. He leaves and goes to WCW. He returns back to ECW, defeats the Dudleys on the Dudleys last night with Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah.
Right? There's a little bit of that in when they're both in WWE. But even when Raven gets into Ring of Honor with Punk in that dog collar match, Tommy's back.
Tommy's there.
It just the span of time and the storytelling that goes through different companies, different decades. Like, I don't know. To me, it's that. Like, I think if you look at the two feuds, and I could be totally wrong, and people in the comments, you can tell me I'm wrong all you want. I don't care. I think you could take away the Sandman feud and still have Raven be as big as he is now. I think you take away that Tommy Dreamer feud, we lose too much. It's like all those things on TikTok of people being like, here's people, you got to eliminate one, but you lose all their history. Like,
right.
To me, it's that you can't take away that Tommy Dreamer thing. So to me, that's why I always focus on that more than the Sandman. And I know more about the Tommy Dreamer than I do the Sandman feud. So
it's kind of like that whole feud is kind of the embodiment of that phrase, we're bound to do this forever.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, Tommy Dreamer, not to go away from Raven too far, Tommy Dreamer had that effect with everybody, because you look at what he just did with Bully Ray and Impact, and you looked what he did. You said it yourself. You look at some of the other places. Tommy Dreamer has shown up in XPW to call back to feuds with ECW. He's shown up in TNA and Impact. He's shown up in WWE to call back to ECW feuds. Like, the man has been everywhere, and he's still to this day, we'll talk about how important those three letters ECW are to him in his career, that he will still show up today to defend those three letters.
Yeah.
So I think it speaks to the importance of Tommy Dreamer, because he's one of those guys where RVD gets a lot of like hype and roses for being the face of ECW.
Oh, it was
But Tommy Dreamer was right there head to head with him. And because Tommy Dreamer was always the passing champion or the transition champion, he never fully got his roses. And in a lot of ways, Tommy Dreamer was Triple H of ECW. Yeah. He was the dude that carried that place on his back when they didn't have anybody else.
Hell, he was running the shows for the last like 6 months that company was fucking around.
Because Paul was working full time in WWE to make money to keep the lights on in ECW. He was getting a paycheck from WWE to pay his ECW shows off. He took a job to keep ECW going, which ended up being their downfall. But again, I could talk on that for days. So
I still stand by that.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. I've said this, like, when and if Paul Heyman gets inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, which a lot of people are speculating this year because of Philly, I still stand by that it should just be ECW as a whole. Like, I know we'll get a lot of comments saying, no, that's stupid. You're not going to induct an entire company.
The originals, Sabu, Sandman, Raven, Rob Van Dam.
The people who maybe would never get put in by themselves.
Blue Meanie.
Yeah.
Blue Meanie for Hall of Fame. God damn it.
Yeah. But I think Tommy would be the one to induct Paul. Like, I think to me, that's who inducts him.
They would make the call to Anthem and have Tommy do it for 100%. There's no other person I think that should induct Paul Heyman into the Hall of Fame than Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah. Well, we keep moving on with Raven, and he does leave ECW. And where does he show up? Same character, World Championship
WCW show.
WCW show, sitting in a chair. Who interviews him? Legendary person, Mean Gene Okerlund. Goes up to him, doesn't say a word. Ignores him, sits there in the front row. Who shows up eventually with him? Same thing, Stevie Richards. Tied together again in WCW. And we get the formation of the WCW flock. And it's very much the land of misfit toys. You get the 7-foot tall Reese. You get Sick Boy. You get Van Hammer. Like, what was Van? I mean,
I think it was
like,
just Hammer and
yeah, he was
the
Hammer.
vlog.
But like I said, Sick Boy. You get a very young Billy Kidman.
You get Perry Saturn.
Perry Saturn. Eventually, you get Canyon because of Raven. And we know how much we love Canyon and Perry Saturn on this
Yes.
channel.
Yes.
Very
yes, we do.
underappreciated, the both of them.
Yes.
Without question.
And to me, I can sum up Raven and WCW 2 matches. Just 2 matches. Uncensored 1998 triple threat match, U.S. title.
Oh,
Diamond Dallas Page, Chris Benoit, and Raven.
Yeah, that match is crazy.
All over the place. I mean, definitely a Ravens rules, which WCW leaned into. It's a Ravens rules match. We can't say extreme, can't say hardcore at this time. Like, it's a Ravens rules match. They can just do whatever. And the second one, to me, one of the most underappreciated pay-per-views in the history of the Attitude Era WCW, Slamboree 1998, the Bowery Death Match cage match with Diamond Dallas Page.
Oh, fuck yeah!
Those 2. If you
forgot about that match.
To me, if you want Raven's greatest moments in WCW, those 2 matches right there. But look who they say it takes 2 to tango. Look who he's in the ring with for both of those. Diamond Dallas Page.
Yep.
And at one point, Chris Benoit. It's not like you're throwing them in there with jobber number 1 and jobber number 2. You got people who can go, who can work, who can sell. Will, since you were at this time just like me, you were WCW. This is what you were watching. Tell me about Raven and WCW for you. What stuck out? What to you? What was it about Raven and WCW that you had your interest or didn't have your interest when he popped up?
Raven wasn't, again, WCW, traditional wrestling with a capital R. Yep. Raven wasn't that traditional wrestling. He was a character. He came in and another guy that's been on the show with us, Crowbar. Like, they've crossed paths, and we just talked about it. Like, he pulls the best out of the people he crossed paths with. And in WCW, it was a lot of the same people in that ECW run. Bischoff was smart about putting people in the ring together that had good chemistry. So you saw him working your Malenkos and your Benoits and your Guerreros and, some of these guys that came up, because he was also in that in-betweener stage. He was a lot like a Canyon, where he wasn't super big, like a big heavyweight guy, but he also wasn't a cruiserweight. He was in that in-betweener size, so he could be athletic. He could be kind of that hardcore style. And I think that was the biggest thing that he brought to the table at that point, was there wasn't a whole lot of people that really worked a lot of gimmick matches. And he had one of those minds where he could just come up with something. And we'll get to it in the TNA because I've got some stuff with Mickie James and him and Jeff Jarrett. But he was one of those guys where he could just be creative and just pull something out of his hat and go. I remember seeing somebody in 1988 do this in the territory where it was like a chainsaw steel cage match. Like, let's fucking try that. Like, he had this like Rolodex of finishes and matches that he had seen. And I feel like everywhere he worked, you saw that happen. With the Ravens rule stuff, like everything. He always had the most creative ways to put matches together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Ravens rules was, you look back on it now and you watch it, the commentators shit all over it. Like they don't. Again, I stand by this. Bobby Heenan, one of the greatest commentators of all time, one of the greatest managers of all time. In WCW, it's kind of like people talking about Vince being out of touch. By that point, Bobby Heenan was a little bit out of touch.
Well, nobody knew what the fuck Raven was doing, because by the time ECW had started to get big with their TV deals and stuff, and we saw these guys come over, your Bobby Heenans and your Tony Schiavone's, your Jim Rosses and your Jerry Lawlers, when the ECW guys get over to WWF, like, they didn't know what the hell this was. Yeah. They weren't watching Extreme Championship Wrestling. They didn't know about hardcore wrestling and death matches. to them, even the stuff FMW that was happening in Japan was mud shows. You know what I mean? They didn't take any of it seriously. So to them, that's why they were just kind of writing it off and laughing at it.
Yeah.
It was that old school gatekeeper mentality.
Very, very true. Very, very true. Well, eventually, folks, WCW closes. Well, can't really say closes. Closes and was bought out by WWE. And eventually, Scott Levy finds himself back in the WWE, back again with Vince McMahon. And it's this time as Raven. Raven does come in. And he's there. You know, I can remember and I can think of things of like he's there and he's a presence. The only thing that ever sticks out to me about that run was, he had a triple threat hardcore title match at Mania 17, which we will talk about on another episode because that won the poll. But it's a triple.
Awesome. I love that match.
He
so
comes
much.
out, he pushes a cart, and it's got a little Frankenstein doll that he can fight with.
And he nearly cuts power to the entire building by running over the power cables with that golf cart.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's 3 people that you didn't know were gonna be in a match that would work kind of well together. Kane, Big Show, and Raven. Like,
yeah. All right, you're the one hardcore dude, so you're calling all this wild shit.
Why do I have a feeling Vince was backstage being like, Scott, make this work.
Yep. Do something with him. All right,
make it work. But yeah, he's there in WWE. And it's in that weird time of the invasion where you've got WCW and you've got ECW and WWF all under the same roof, all under the same banner. And there's just it to me, sorry folks, I'm going to say it and I'm going to get heat for it. It's the problem with AEW. There's too much talent under a roof. At that, you cut back some talent, Raven could have stood out.
Yeah.
So he got lost in the shuffle.
Did he need it though?
He didn't need to be there, but it would have been nice to the hard work of that character that he took from ECW to WCW and now was back on the grandest stage, like to be, more of a main event player. Like, it would have been nice to see what he could have done with, I'm not saying put him in there with like with Austin and The Rock and stuff like that, but some more meaningful feuds than just like, oh yeah, you're the hardcore guy, here's the hardcore title. Like,
he would have been a fantastic Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah. Give him that belt. Let him run with it for a little bit. Let him have some feuds with because here's the thing, though. They could have played into some of the storylines. Because one thing I forgot to mention before when he was still in WCW was they could have played off the storyline of they exposed Raven as being a spoiled rich kid and having rich parents.
Yep.
Not living off the streets with a poor mom and poor dad. They could have easily played that off and had interactions with Stephanie and Stephanie been like, my parents knew your parents. I knew you. Like
the whole SLC Punk thing where he's like this king of the punk scene and it turns out he lives in the suburbs with his 6-figure parents.
Yeah. Right. Like the stuff that could have been played off with more of a major storyline. But eventually he's gone. He's gone from WWE. And where do we show up next? TNA?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's a plethora of independence and TNA between, if you look at that 03 run to 2014 run, he made more towns than a Widespread Panic tour. That dude worked everywhere for 10 years in the business. Juggalo Championship Wrestling, WXW in Germany. He was in TNA. He did stops with every major indie in the 2000s, including IWA Mid-South, ICW. He wrestled in Britain. That dude was a workhorse from roughly the end of 02 when he left WWE until 2014. when he kind of had his first mini retirement, when he took pretty much 2 years off. And I am looking at a list. I'm not recalling this from memory, but just looking at the sheer list of promotions where that man did work. Like, he had the busiest year of his career in 2001. Right after he left WWE, he worked 140 matches that year. Like, to put it in perspective, outside of the biggest company in the world, he still managed to work 140 times in 1 year. That's a match every 3 days.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
And I mean, he got a chance in TNA to be a world champion. Like,
Yep.
that could have. It shows how, look who's running TNA at the time. It's our boy Double J and Daddy Jarrett. They could have really easily been like, you know what? Nope, we're starting this company off. Like, okay, we had Shamrock in as champion. We could easily, let's put this on a big giant name, someone that's was a world champion, world champion in WCW. Like, we're still pulling from there. Nope, we're putting on Raven. Let's see what he can do. And look at the matches they had. Look at the feuds that TNA had with him. I don't know. He had, to me, some of the matches that he had in TNA, and and a lot of the matches that I recall in my brain with him in TNA tend to be multi-man matches. And you can tell that he's the one calling the plays out there with these multi-man matches. Like, he's being that ring general, which I don't think he gets enough credit for. To me, and I don't know if this is going to be like Will and I always joke, like, who's going to make the comment that's going to blow the other one's mind each week. But Scott Levy and the Raven character was our generation's Jake the Snake Roberts, psychology-wise.
I can agree to that.
I can definitely agree with that.
Like, that was our generation's Jake the Snake in terms of psychology, in terms of reading an audience, in terms of feeling the pulse of where a match is going and understanding that and shifting that and moving that. And this isn't going to work. Let's try it this way. That didn't work. Let's shift again. Like, I don't think he gets enough credit for that. So I want to give Scott Levy his flowers for that.
To kind of piggyback off of that question, who do you think that is now?
Randy Orton.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Randy's just my initial, my jump to answer, just because he is. He reads that crowd. He can. He knows when a crowd is hot, when to milk something,
mm-hmm.
and when not to. Like,
I almost say Seth. I feel like Seth knows how to play his silences. He can play his rests. He can let things breathe. He's one of those guys can walk out into that ring and he can stand in the middle of the ring and not say anything and conduct the crowd, do exactly what he wants. Like, I would probably say Seth, not to be cheesy, but he's earned the moniker of being the architect. Like, that man can build anything, chicken salad out of chicken shit. Like, Seth has been able to turn anything he's been given into gold every time. So I say maybe like Seth Rollins, but even then I put it in the perspective of all these guys have won world titles. Like, I'm not even doing anything, Mac. Like,
that was the max response to you saying Seth Rollins.
Whoa. Yeah, apparently Steve Jobs is not a Rollins fan. But yeah, I would say, like, looking at guys who haven't won world titles, like, I can't think of one right offhand that's just been otherworldly good. Like, you almost want to say like a Dustin Rhodes, but Dustin is from this generation. He's the same generation as Raven. They came up at the same time, late 80s through the 90s. Like, so you can't even say somebody like a Dustin Rhodes. That's a good question. I'll just sit on it.
That's gonna be a TikTok release. Like, he's gonna, like, next couple of days, he's gonna
Oh yeah,
It's
I'm
gonna click.
act like I'm not gonna post that tomorrow.
Yeah. Just wait till this drops because I don't know if it'll be
Wait,
tomorrow
yeah,
or the
yeah.
next day.
Drop this, and then I'll
Yeah.
do it.
Like 3 different versions of the same question all come out the day this drops.
Yeah. It'd be cool to see what their responses are too. Just make sure in your videos be like, for more like this, subscribe to World Championship Wreckage.
I'm plugging the channel. Come on.
We will Mick Foley anytime. We will cheap plug World Championship Wreckage all day long.
Forever.
Well, to me, after TNA, the big memorable feud to me is kind of like his last kind of hurrah into the sunset. You know, besides just being on the indies and stuff, it's the CM Punk feud and Ring of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was that's a clear passing of the torch moment. That's a clear like, here you go, kid. You're the anti-establishment wrestler of this generation, where I was the anti-establishment wrestler of my generation. Let's go. And that dog collar match is beautiful. Yes, sir.
I'm looking at matches post TNA just to see if I see anything that stands out. And the banger of at FSW Mecca 2 in the Cannery Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada, March 11th, 3/11 day, 2018. Raven and Tommy Dreamer versus Eli Drake and Disco Inferno. In 2018.
In 2019?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Eli Drake teaming with Disco Inferno. I'm gonna have to find footage of this match.
I need to see this.
I'm gonna see if I can find it. Like 2018 wasn't that long ago. Everybody had an iPhone in 2018.
That hurts my heart.
It's like Raven and Eli Drake in the same ring.
Tommy Dreamer and Disco Inferno.
Like that's like the 1989 Royal Rumble when Shawn Michaels and Andre the Giant are in the same ring together, and you're like,
it just doesn't compute.
It's like how Wrestle Talk in the UK says it's like seeing cars and horses on the road at the same time. It's just it feels weird.
Yeah. Oh man, that's just, I don't know. Just that combination of people has made my brain stop. Thanks, Will.
You're welcome, guys. I saw it, so you had to.
Fucking Disco Inferno.
Ruining
everything.
Ruining everything. Everything.
Goddamn.
Husky, for you, how important is that dog collar match with CM Punk?
We wouldn't get the dog collar match that we got with MJF, because there is a lot of touches from that original dog collar match in that there's parts of that are basically like a love letter to that
Raven and CM Punk. Yeah, it's great. I mean, that whole feud and Punk has always been gold on the mic. You can't deny that. Right. Even back then, on the being on the mic against Raven in Punk's infancy, if you will. Beautiful. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful feud. It's a beautiful match. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Everything.
I mean, the clip from when MJF comes back as the devil.
Yeah.
The clip from CM Punk, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is making you people believe he didn't exist. That's from that match.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, I don't think
still playing part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Raven does eventually go into a Hall of Fame. He gets into the TNA Hall of Fame. That was what? Last year or the year before? It's been recent.
I think it was last year.
I
want to say last year.
Great induction ceremony. And then we talked about it right before we started recording. He's currently under contract and has recently shown back up at MLW. And now, because of that, I realized I need to start watching more MLW.
Yeah, as
Just
of March 2023, he is in a stable called The Calling, which is him, Ricky Shane Page, and Akira. Delirious is a part of it, apparently.
Nice.
Dr. Cornwallis and Mandy Leone.
okay. I'm gonna have to go back and watch some old school MLW. I guess what I know what I'll do when I'm on vacation and can't.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say when if I can't sleep. I got 2 kids. I can sleep whenever now. Y'all people
Right.
like I can fall asleep right now if y'all just look. Y'all were
Stop
joking.
talking to me for 5 minutes. I'll be dead asleep.
5 minutes. Give me a minute. Y'all were taking bets and joking about me being the first one to fall asleep watching Elimination Chamber. So I'm just over here like,
It was almost me at one point, dude.
yeah, dude.
I caught myself falling.
Yeah. WWE, all about going overseas to different countries. You don't have to air it live. Just make sure nobody comes in with cell phones and like,
Yeah, tape it and play it at noon, brother.
yeah.
Like, please.
Well, folks, that's all I've got about Raven. I love Raven. He's one of my favorite characters of all time in the world of professional wrestling. When in doubt, go find a good Raven match and just watch it. I stand by those 2 in WCW. Slamboree 98, Uncensored 98. If you haven't watched them, kids, go find those and watch them. Well, what last things you want to say about Raven? Or Scott Levy, I should say.
When I had a chance to interview Mickie James, I asked her about working with Raven and TNA in the early days of Impact. It was around the 20th anniversary of Impact, actually, when I did this interview, and we talked about him producing the Ravens Clockwork Orange House of Fun match between her and Jeff Jarrett, and all she did was she could just praise him for how smart he was about how to set up that match to where Jeff Jarrett could work her like one of the boys, but safely. And she talked about how Raven had these ideas about like the chain link fences giving more give, but it looked like she was getting absolutely wrecked, but it was like hitting a springboard for her. So Jeff could throw her around, but she would hit these fences and it hurt, but it would she would hit and bounce right back off. You see what I mean? And Raven had this brain to make the match look absolutely brutal, but do it so safely that Jeff Jarrett could work with somebody so delicate as Mickie James. I'm not going to say small or frail, but you know what I mean? But like
right.
A woman versus a man in that hardcore of a match shouldn't work. But Raven's brain was able to make that violent of an affair work in the ring between a man and a woman. And he executed it perfectly. And that's all Mickie James could do is sing the praises of Raven. And when you look at a great like her, if she'll look at you after winning 5 or 6 world championships over 2 or 3 companies, and then look at Raven and go, this guy's the most brilliant man I've ever worked with. And think about the people she's worked with. You know, like that says everything that needs to be said about who Raven is.
Yeah. Husky, last comments, last thoughts.
To kind of piggyback off of what Will was saying, if anybody out there has watched the Forever Hardcore documentary that Shane Douglas put together, it has a bunch of people that weren't involved in like the one night stand WWE thing. It has like Sandman, Todd Gordon's a part of it, New Jack, Francine, Shane Douglas, Terry Funk is a part of it. But they talk about Raven, and Sandman was like, he was getting ideas for everybody. He would come into the locker room and sit down. He'd have a bar napkin with ideas for one guy. He'd have like a sheet of toilet paper with shit written on it for people. Like he was just pulling stuff like, oh, okay, yeah, this is for him. This is for him. Like he was constantly coming up with ideas to help out other people's characters. So that's just a testament to what a great mind he was. And in my opinion, he's the greatest ECW champion of all time.
I second that. To me, I mean, you can look at the history of ECW, look at their champions. There's ones that stick out. Terry Funk put him on the map.
Mm-hmm.
Can't deny that.
Oh, 100%.
Raven, he made him mainstream. To me, Raven is the one that made ECW mainstream, that brought in, outside fans outside of Philly.
Yep. And then he took it down to Atlanta and was like, hey, we can do this too.
Yeah. Well, folks, that was the evolution of Scott Levy. That was our little bonus episode. We're still going to do business. We're still going to throw out a poll, just so we can have stuff to prepare since I'll be on vacation next week. But before we get out of here, of course, and we'll do the poll, but let's plug some stuff. Husky, where can they find you? What you got going on?
As you can see by my tag, I guess I have a Twitter now. I forgot I had it until like 10 minutes before we started shooting. But you can find me there. Give me a reason to use that fucking thing. It's at the Husky Roads _. You can find me on TikTok at Husky Roads 912, Instagram the Husky Roads. Catch me every Monday on this here YouTube channel for Queen's Court with the Tribal Queen Bree Stout and the Wrestling Encyclopedia Mike Duplessis, where we break down Monday Night Raw from the start to the finish. The next episode we're about to record in a couple days is going to be for May and the first 2 weeks of June of 1994, and then we're going to be doing King of the Ring after that.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. I think we might try and do a little like a live deal for King of the Ring,
like we did for Mania.
We're kind of in like we did for WrestleMania. We're kind of in talks about that. So yeah, you can catch me there.
Yeah, y'all are gonna hate it when they get SmackDown. You have to watch SmackDown with Raw to keep up with storylines.
Oh, dude, I was telling everybody, like, when we get to a point where we have a Patreon for the channel, I'm making Bree watch a bunch of wild shit. The first thing on the agenda is the Main Event Mafia episode of TNA.
Oh yeah.
I need to see her reaction to Scott Steiner's ring announcing.
Oh, that's so good.
White trash and rednecks.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Well, Will, what's going on over at Rivet City Radio?
Tons. If you check my link tree and you go to patreon.com/Rivet City Radio, come March 1st, we're having a complete rebranding of the website completely. We're incorporating, I think we're up to 5 or 6 different content writers that are going to be doing anything from beat writing for spring training for Major League Baseball to covering hockey to covering in the NFL to wrestling content creators. Dad Hat might be participating some. I won't say anything more than that because it's going to be under a pen name because he's going to be telling us some stories from his field. I'm going to be I've got the Delicious as Fuck cookbook that's going up. I've got me. I've got 2 other chefs that are contributing, one of which is a Michelin-starred chef from New York. He's going to be dropping his first recipes for that. You've got shows ad-free. You've got the articles. You've got watch-alongs. You've got all of it. Come March, everything changes at Rivet City Radio. It's going to be unreal.
Hopefully you just have time for us little people over here on the,
This is all I do. I do this and botch bots and share shots in my interviews. The rest of it is an oiled machine that runs itself at this point.
Hell yeah.
So I'm trying to get my job to be like cool. It runs. I just gotta show up and be there. Well, for us here at World Championship Wreckage, we keep rolling along. Queen's Court, I said it in the last episode of Wreckage. Everybody's busy. We got a bunch of talented people, but they also have lives, so we try to bust out the content when we can. But I love to get more out. Yes. Do I have enough times in the day to do it myself? No. But I love everybody that I get to work with. To me, I get to interact with some of the smartest people in the entire wrestling fandom, from Husky to Will to Bree to John to Jax to XLJ and everybody that Jay knows wrestling. Can't leave out Jay. Just everybody. Like I'm lucky that they humor me and all of my crazy ass ideas. I might throw like 10 different shows out and one of them might actually work. But yeah. So you can find me at Dad Hat Wrestling everywhere. X and Instagram and TikTok. You can find World Championship Wreckage everywhere. Give us a follow, give us a subscribe here on YouTube. We are just a few, I think we're 4 or 5 away from hitting 200. 200 comes a couple of new shows as well as doing a giveaway here soon. But yeah, that's just all the plugging that we need to do. But Will, we got to talk about what we're going to talk about next. Like, I know we're going to talk about WrestleMania X7. You won that poll. Now we got to figure out what we're doing after that. So I'll let you go first this time because I've got to think of something.
We're gonna watch a match, and it's gonna be an old match, and it's not WCW, and it's not WWE, and it's not TNA. We're gonna go to Memphis. Okay. We're gonna watch it's 1978. It's the Tupelo concession stand brawl between Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee versus the Blonde Bombers. This match is historic for one reason, because when this match was booked, they said to the arena, look, we're going to do kind of it's going to be a little bit different. The boys are going to go all over the arena. Falls are going to count everywhere. Literally one of the earliest forms of a hardcore match. They did so much damage to the arena that the promoter made no money from the gate.
Oh, shit.
Holy
shit. 70s. So the Tupelo concession stand brawl. We're going to go one for the history books.
Yeah, I'm going to vote for that, but I'm still going to throw out a topic. We're heading into Mania season, right? We're heading into Mania. And Mania is really centered around the We Want Cody, push from the fans, which is kind of like the Yes movement. And you might be thinking, oh, he's going to go with Daniel Bryan's Yes movement. No. I want to focus on somebody that we have for some reason, we have not talked about a lot on World Championship Wreckage. I want to talk about the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. I want to talk about Cody's dad. I want to talk about parallels with Cody. I want to talk about that match in Madison Square Garden that Cody talks about in that promo. I want to talk about what Cody draws from when he fights against being like his father. I think there's a lot that we could go into other than just the history of Dusty, just because Dusty's getting brought up a lot right now. So we're going old school for this poll for sure.
Yeah, so there's no way around it. We're talking about the 70s just about no matter what.
Yep. Right. Yep. Well, cool. Well, folks, that was another episode. We appreciate you guys taking the time and watching. We're going to get some more confetti or something falling from lasers.
Yeah, light show.
I'm going to have to get you to teach me how to do that because I got a Mac. Well, folks, for Husky Rhodes, for my buddy, the Will Gray, I am your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan. And like always, we're going to leave you with some wise words from the American Cream. I always do it. I'm so used to saying the American Cream Dream with you that I mess up the American Dream. Dusty Rhodes every time, every week I do it. But wise words from Papa Rhodes.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.